My name is Rance, Clayton. I was born actually in Tupelo, and I've lived in New Albany all my life, Union County all my life, pretty much. Uh, my mother actually lives in the Risen Circle community right now. My granddad, my whole family lives in Martintown, and I grew up here and going to school and playing sports, just like everybody else. But I've been farming all my life. That's where I got into the spring sports, and I think where it really took root because I've worked as long as when I could walk, I was driving a tractor. I could remember my granddad putting me on it. I couldn't even mash the clutch, just turn me loose in the field and go, They don't do it like that nowadays, but that's the way, folks used to be raised, and that's how I was raised. So I played football here at New Albany. We never had a powerlifting team or anything like that. We just had football, and I kind of got introduced to powerlifting a little bit by a coach we had at the time, Coach Brown. We had him for about 2 years, and he wanted to get a program started, but just never get involved. And I like lifting weights, and I joined the military. I was in the U.S. I was in the Mississippi National Guard. For 11 years. I did a tour in Iraq. I pretty much got out of weightlifting and strength sports, until I went to Iraq, and I got back into lifting weights. But I've always loved competing. And the arm wrestling thing was just natural for me because anywhere you go around here, and it's one of the things that I love about it, everybody's arm wrestling. Nobody that you can talk to who's not arm wrestled their aunt at the kitchen or their uncle, somebody. Everybody's done it, And I was the typical guy around here nobody beat, And we make fun of that in the arm wrestling world. There's a lot of people who's never been beaten. I was one of those guys. Nobody can beat me around here. And I always wanted to know what I could do against other people that was good at arm wrestling, but for a long time, I looked at competitions, and they were all, about 5-6 hours away, and I just didn't want to drive. It just wasn't that important to me. But about 2015, Wayne Withers, a guy, one of my mentors actually, he pretty much started Mississippi arm wrestling. It's been pretty big throughout the rest of the country, especially in Alabama, Louisiana, and our surrounding states. Just haven't had it here in Mississippi. And he put on the first recognized arm wrestling tournament ever in 2015, and I found out about it. And of course, I said, I'm gonna try this out. So me and a couple of guys from around here went down there, and you could enter the amateurs or the pros. And I thought, heck, I'm a pro. Can't nobody beat me. So my buddies got in the amateurs, and they got smoked. And when it got to be my turn, I was like, oh, I'm messed up. But I actually did pretty well in it. I got first place left-handed, and I got second place right-handed. And I was pretty lucky, but I showed out, and there was a team. We have teams somewhat, and there was a team from Alabama. Their coach took an interest in me, and he got to talk to me at the tournament, and he got me to go in and practice with those guys over in Tuscaloosa, and there was a few more guys from Mississippi came to that tournament, and we started getting together and practicing and doing this and that. And we've slowly grown it in Mississippi, and it's gotten to be pretty big. But the guys from Alabama really taught me a lot and got me into competing, and they're the ones who got me into traveling and going to see what I could do. So, and I realized I was not a professional in the least. But in 2016, the spring of 2016, it's pretty much there's no guidelines really for arm wrestling and how you move up. You can go straight to pro or you can do amateur. You're only going to be able to do amateurs if you win about 3 events and pretty much beat everybody. Any event you go to, they're going to recognize you and not let you in that. So that spring, I had gotten where I was beating a pretty good bit of people. And I won 3 tournaments in a row, and I said, all right, it's time to move up. Well, at that time, they had a tournament in Vegas, the World Championships, and I went to that in June, and I went just trying not to lose. The formats are usually double elimination, right? So I just didn't want to lose 2 matches and go home. So that was my motivating factor going into that tournament. And I won my first match, and I was like, okay, well, you got to give me, you keep it up. So I won a second match, and then I won a third match. My uncle actually came out there to see me. He's from around here. He's a farmer, and he planned his vacation around it. And I always thought that was interesting because he's wearing his overalls and cheering me on. We're in Vegas, at a big casino. One of the ESPN's covering this thing, right? And I got my uncle back there in the background, cheering me on. And so I messed around, and I ended up winning first place left-handed in the World Championship Amateurs, and I got second place right-handed. And they let me, the next month, they let me do the national tournament as an amateur, and I won the national championship left-handed, and I won the national championship right-handed. And everybody pretty much said then, you're not an amateur anymore. You can't compete at this level. So then I started my pro career, and it was pretty rocky. I almost quit, I'm not gonna lie. I went the difference in amateurs and pros is significant. And when I started going to pro events, I didn't win a match in a tournament. Not a tournament. I didn't win a match for 6 months. And I almost backed out. I said, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. But a friend of mine was having a tournament in Birmingham, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to go to my friend's tournament. I'm going to hang out with my friends, because that's what arm wrestling has become. It's just such a small knit group that it becomes like a family. Everybody knows everybody, everybody's supporting everybody. So I went to my buddy's tournament, and I won my first pro match. And from then on, I've just been trying to get better. And I think 2019, of course, I've had a few setbacks. In 2019, well, when was it? It's 4 years ago. I was 39. I had 3 heart attacks, and that set me back a pretty good bit. And that happened, let's see, 2018, something like that. So that happened in September of that year, and the next August, I had a motorcycle wreck that like killed me and crushed my jaw, and landed me in the hospital. So that set me back. And I came back from all that, and I just trained my butt off and kept working at it. And 3 years ago, I won my first national title as a professional. Went to California, got in the USAA tournament, and won my first national title. And since then, I've won countless state tournaments, and I'm a 5-time national champion professional arm wrestler. So, and I've traveled. I get to travel all over the place. I mean, we were in Atlantic City 3 weeks ago. We went to Vegas. We did a tournament in Vegas. Dallas was where Nationals was at last year. I've qualified to go to Worlds the last 3 years in a row. I just can't afford to make the trip, because like the first year I made it, I made the list. It was in Hungary, and like this year it was in Paris. And right now I've got 3 girls, and they're taking most of my time. So I really can't afford to go progress any further than where I'm at just yet, but we'll get there.
Wow. What year did you say you graduated from high school?
I graduated in '96.
Okay.
There are some age divisions. You've got the open class, which anybody can get in, and then you at 40, most of them from 40 to 50s, you have the masters divisions, and then 50 to 60s grandmasters. They also do it by weight class, and it depends on what organization is putting on the event, determines the weight classes. Most of them go by standard powerlifting weight classes. You can look those up. I'm not sure. I know my weight classes, and that's about it. I compete at 220, 230, and 242 for the most part. But it's all broke up by size and age and stuff like that. Unless you're just elite and good and you get in the open, and it don't matter what class, because they can beat anybody. Physically, it's about your hand and your upper body strength and tying it all together. And the reason a lot of your super heavyweights are better is because they're really tall, long limb people. And believe it or not, you don't have to have a big, meaty arm to be good at arm wrestling. You just have to have a long lever. So a longer armed guy with a bigger hand typically does better in arm wrestling. A guy that's less strong and has those tools to work with does better in arm wrestling than somebody with a big, meaty arm that's typically stronger. But even said, that's the physical attributes. The mental attributes is just, there's so much technique to it. You would never think, just sitting here watching it, what all goes on in a match, but it's all about micro movements. Just a little placement of the hand here, a little bit of back pressure there can make a match. And of course, there's strength involved too. I mean, if you're just dominantly stronger than the next guy, you're going to beat him, you know. But typically, as an amateur level, you can go a long way off good technique, and you can beat most everybody. On the same token, as an amateur, if you're stronger than everybody, you can just go in there and beat everybody as an amateur. You can't do that as a pro. You have to be strong, and you have to have the technique. And then at some level, your God-given genetics and the tools you have to work with play another factor in that too. So,
how did you learn those techniques?
Practice. A lot of practice. A lot of whooping.
How do you practice around here? Who do you practice with?
Well, that's something else I was going to talk to about the Mississippi arm wrestling. We've got a big group. We've got a page on Facebook called Mississippi Arm Fighter. And us as a state, we're pretty unique, and people are trying to mimic us, even though we're fairly new in the community, is that we're, throughout the state, we're a tight-knit group. And we've got people down, we pretty much divide the state up into regions. We got people that are way down south. We got people in the mid territory, and then I'm kind of over the North Mississippi area. And we all get together as a big group once or twice a year. And as a small group, I put it out there, and we get the people from North Mississippi, Southern Tennessee. You know, sometimes we'll go to Alabama to those guys and practice with them. You know, we just practice with basically whoever we can get to practice with. The rules are fairly simple, and that's something else that I'm making a pretty good career at. Is I'm a ref too. I decided to start reffing after I had my heart attacks, because I love the sport so much. I couldn't not be around it. I had to do something, so I started learning how to ref. And I am certified to ref in 3 different leagues, and I'm also certified to ref as in the World League, in the World Organization. So if I ever get to go to Worlds, I can do that. But the rules are pretty simple. I mean, it's just, you got to keep one foot on the floor at all the time. You know, you can put your foot up, whatever. Your elbows got to stay on the pad. You got pads and you got handholds, right? And your elbow has to stay on the pad. You can't come up or off the pad, or you know, as long as your elbow stays in the pad. And you have to have a hold to the table, the peg at all times. It's pretty simple.
And is the peg, like, is it something you can really like pull against, or is it really just
some people use it to pull against, and some people use it to prop on, and some people it doesn't matter. It just depends on how you pull. And that's, when I talk about pulling, that's what we refer to as arm wrestling, because the way you arm wrestle or should arm wrestle, you pull towards you. Where you pull this way, you're not really pushing. Because if you do it wrong, there's a very, very good possibility you're getting hurt. I've seen a lot of arm breaks in arm wrestling. About not every tournament somebody breaks arm, and it's usually new people that don't know what they're doing.
How long does a typical match go on?
A typical match lasts about 5 seconds.
Really?
Honestly, it's quick. That's the reason it doesn't. It's not real popular, and it's not really a spectator sport, because it's not something that's drawn out, and you know, you get into matches that are longer. They're just uncommon. I've gotten to where you can either pull tournaments or you can get with somebody that's higher ranking or whatever, and you can pull what we call a super match. And that's where you pull fresh before a tournament, you and him face each other. And it's kind of like the spotlight's on you. And you can pull best 2 out of 3, or you can pull best 3 out of 5. Or say like, the organization we're with right now, it's PAL, it's kind of a world division. They do their arm fights as vendetta matches, and you have to pull 6 rounds, win or lose. So that gets into your endurance level there too. And I've pulled a couple of vendetta matches, and they can be grueling. The longest match I've ever pulled was 3 years ago with a guy from Florida named Craig Sibule. And he's originally from Canada, but he moved to Florida. And in total time, starting and stopping and everything, we ended up pulling on each other's arm for 5 minutes. Matches, if you just did the start-stop times on all matches. And that's the longest match I've ever been in. And it was not fun.
So, like if you're in a tournament and you go up against an opponent, do you just do that one time, or do you do like 5? Or
well, in a tournament, like I said, most tournaments are run double elimination style. So you've got 2 chances to lose. If you keep winning, if you win and keep winning, you know, you got your A side that's winners, and then you got your B sides that's everybody's had a loss, right? So once you get 2 losses, you're out. You're out of the tournament. And that's the way most tournaments are ran. A lot of your regular state tournaments and stuff like that, your national tournaments and like Worlds in Vegas and stuff like that, they go 2-3 days. The World Tournament actually goes 7 days.
Wow.
Because they break all the, well, there's just so many countries in it. And it's big in the United States, but it's more of a pastime sport. There's nobody doing it that just makes money doing arm wrestling, you know. But for a lot of states, a lot of your Eastern European and Asian countries, they actually get funded by the government to their strength sport athletes. So they're weightlifters, they're arm wrestlers and stuff like that. That's all they do for a living. And there's a lot of countries in overseas that are really into strength sports and stuff like that. So it's big. It's very, very much popular in the world. It's not as big in the States because, you know, we got such big sports like football and basketball, you know, good spectator sports everybody wants to watch. But a lot of your Eastern European countries and stuff like that are really into it.
How is it set up, like when you went to Vegas, or I guess really anywhere, but how is it set up for spectators to watch it?
It just depends on the venue, what they've got to work with at the particular venue. But their seats. The one the very first one I went to, there was no seating. They had 4 tables, and it was 1 table for each weight class. And this was for the amateur divisions. During the tournament, everybody just stood around and watched, and it was crowded. It was mayhem. But then at the finals, they put us in the arena where they had 1 table and the stadium seatings around it and stuff like that. So it really depends on the venue and what they got to work with. Every league uses a little bit different variation of the table. Like the WAL, they have a looser rule set. They're not as strict on elbow fouls, and they let a lot of stuff go. And their pads are longer, and their pads are bigger, and they set up towards the back. All table heights are standard, and I can't remember the measurements, but they're all standard height, they're all standard width and stuff like that. Just some of them use a little bit different pads.
Is it kind of, is it any sort of like super strong table, or is it can you just use any table?
Well, I mean, you can use any table, but you can't use just any table for competing, because it's got to be, you got to have it on a stable platform so it doesn't move, because you get two guys up there, or 2 ladies that know what they're doing and putting their weight into it will move a table and slide it around to where you can't, to where it throws the other one off, and you can't have that. So it's got to be bolted to the floor. It's got to be stable. You know, materials vary though, depending on what they make it out of it, but it's got to be pretty stable.
So there are female divisions.
Oh, there's teen divisions and there's female divisions. There's a division for everybody. Like I said, that's one of the things I love about it, because a lot of sports, a lot of people's never played. I mean, like tennis or golf or, baseball. There's a lot of people who's never played baseball, whatever. But there's nobody that's ever not arm wrestled, And that's one of the things I love about it. As far as professionally goes or competitively goes, you can compete at it at whatever age. We have kids divisions at the big tournaments where you have enough to have. We have kids divisions, and they're always fun to watch. And then you get into the teen divisions and the ladies divisions and the masters and then you get into the open course. So there's a class for everybody depending on what level of tournament you go to.
How many participants do you think you have in Mississippi right now in your group?
In Mississippi Arm Fighter, we've probably got 50 competitors now. I mean, we've grown it pretty good. And that was something else I was going to say about Mississippi State. It's we typically have 3 tournaments in Mississippi a year. We have one in Hattiesburg in the spring called Battle of the Berg. It was started as a memorial for one of our pullers whose fathers died. And then we had in the summertime or the late summer, we have Mississippi State. And then I usually have a tournament in Tupelo, Mississippi Mayhem. And all of us pull together, to make those tournaments successful. But we really concentrate on Mississippi State. And the last 3 years, we have made Mississippi State probably the biggest tournament in the country. Last year we had over 350 competitors. We flew guys in from Canada, New Jersey, California to come forward at that tournament to do super matches and throw a big production. And we've gained some notoriety and popularity in the sport. So.
When you have yours at Tupelo, where do you have that?
I typically have it at Steele's Dive because it's in the fall. It's on the outside patio. There's somewhere a good arm wrestling tournament is generally because you're there so long. You need to have it somewhere where you've got food. You got a good environment. Family friendly environment because it's a family friendly sport. We don't. You would think that's another oddity about arm wrestling. I found was odd. Before I arm wrestled, I competed in powerlifting. I actually had some national records in powerlifting, and I liked arm wrestling so much I got out of it. But arm wrestling and powerlifting is similar in the fact that you think there's going to be a lot of testosterone, and there is. There's a lot of alpha males there and all that, but I've never seen a fight. I've been doing it since 2015. I've never seen a single fight. It's just odd. They don't, I think it's because everybody there respects everybody, and they know that you're not going to come in there and talk a bunch of crap, and get over on somebody, and everybody respects everybody, so everybody just keeps it there. Now, there's a fair amount of trash talk. It's a competitive sport, But as far as violence or anything like that, it's not what most people expect when they come to it. It's a very family-friendly environment. The kids come, they have a good time. Every time I've ever brought somebody, the first time my mom came to one of my events, she was shocked at how much she got into it because she's never been in the sport. It's just not her thing. She'd come to support me, but that's about it. And even she was like, I really enjoyed that. That was fun. So.
Is there a certain time of the year that this is a season, or is it just?
It pretty much is. It goes on all year. A lot of your bigger tournaments are like nationals and stuff like that are in the summertime because Worlds is in the fall, and that's typically always the way it goes. And you'll have tournaments year round, but the big ones, the ones that are highlight tournaments and stuff like that, most of them are towards the later end of the spring, all during summer, and then they kind of start knocking off around fall.
You said you have 3 daughters. Are any of them interested in arm wrestling?
It's funny. My oldest daughter, she was in powerlifting in high school, and she arm wrestled a little bit. She enjoyed it, and but she got a scholarship at Blue Mountain to powerlift, so we cut arm wrestling out. It's not worth hurting yourself over that. You know, she's a junior in college now. And my middle child, she has no desire to do anything like that. She's into drama, and you know, we support all our kids. You know, whatever you want to do. And my youngest one, my middle one's a senior this year in high school, and my youngest one has just turned 15. She's a freshman. And the funny thing about it, she's never showed any desire to do anything like that. She's never really been into sports. She's tried it, just not really her thing. Well, the other day, my children's names are Anna, Abby, and Amelia. And Amelia called out Anna the other day. She said, "I think I'm ready for you. I think I can do something." And we were all kind of laughing, you know. And Anna, they put their arm on the table, and she beat her. And my oldest can't stand that. She couldn't stand it. So she tried it again. She couldn't beat her. So, of course, they had to go left hand, and Anna beat her. And then she had to wrestle her, and she wrestled her to the ground and beat her and all that. So I've got two that are kind of interested in it. And Amelia's not getting interested in it now. She's wanting me to start teaching her and stuff like that. So, you know, it's fun watching them. It's fun to watch, and you know, anybody that ever wants to try it, it's so hard to get people to try it because they've got egos or whatever holding them back. Now, I don't want to lose, and I don't want you playing with me. But you know, when we practice, we don't bring egos to practice. You know, we're not trying to beat everybody at practice. We just want to make everybody better, and that's one of the fundamental things. If you can get people to just come to practice and enjoy it, you know, learn to enjoy it, you know, because everybody's going to get beat, you know. But if you learn that the sport's cool, how cool the sport is, and how cool people are in it, then it's pretty fun. I've had several people that'll put out there on Facebook or whatever, you know, I'm in the area, I want to practice. And if they're down south, one of us will shout out to the guys down south, "Hey, pick this guy up, you know, talk to him." Or we'll send them their direction. They'll say, "Hey, DM me, you know, we'll get together, we'll practice sometime." And I've done that, I've done that with several people. Had people call me, "Hey, I'm going to try this out. You think you could work with me?" And I'm like, "Sure, man, just, you know, pick a time, place, whatever, and, you know, we'll get together if we can."
You said